Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Mike,
I'm Duran.
and this is Before We Forget. So, Duran,
Yo.
before we forget, this is part 2. Does your trauma define who you are? Before we left, we were kind of talking about how, at first we were saying that certain traumas people get kind of stuck into what the trauma is and never actually have that release for it. But then we also looked at the side of things where it's the trauma of things that have happened to you that shape you into who you are, or could potentially shape you into the habits that you do. Right. So we were kind of speaking right before we left off on the last episode about how, 2020 for a lot of people was very traumatic. For me, I ended up losing a friend to suicide, which kind of triggered some previous feelings of a friend who I wasn't able to be there for, I could have been there for, but I made a decision and it ended up in that person passing away, and how it shaped me for how I am now. But when we look at the other side of things too, I think of like how some of your traumas have made you who you are, right? And we ain't got to dive deep into what they actually were, but we have one that's kind of similar as
Yeah, we
far
can dive
as
into it if you want to.
it's up to you, but we have one that's kind of similar as far as when we were kids, neither one of our fathers were in the picture at the beginning, right? We knew who they were, but they were incarcerated. So it played, as much as people don't think that's a trauma, it is a trauma because you don't have that man in the home, especially your father in the home, to set that example and play that role. Right? So how has that shaped you?
Well, I mean, it's shaped me in a way to where I don't know. I just found my way to figure it out. Uh, More importantly, I just looked to the friends that I made, and that became my family. So it's like when you find a cub or something in the woods, and then a different pack of animals adopt them into uh, the family. That's how it was. So any of that other stuff or anything I wanted to know or do, like if I ain't did that with y'all, I don't know what it is, or I didn't too much care for it. So it was a make my own way thing instead of a mentorship thing where I was supposed to get some knowledge from somebody. I didn't get that, so I got that from my friends, and that's how I covered that up. And I just let it be what it is, because we started making memories and doing things on our own,
True.
so I just
And we made some mistakes.
I decided to do different things. But my mama was in my life, so she was there to tell me something and say something. So in a sense, that just made me value what a woman says more than the average person, because I'm like, my mama told me all that. So I was on some Tupac type stuff. Like, I got my name from a woman. I got my game from a woman. I got everything from a woman. But yes, I am a man, but my mama taught me how to talk to ladies and talk to whatever and
Right.
do this. Manners, don't do that. Don't be this. And then just seeing how my mama was made me respect, women in the way I respect them. So,
But also now being a grown man, like you see the aspects of the things that your mama couldn't teach you as a young man, right?
right. But then that's when, that's a different story in a sense, because I got on some J. Cole stuff, and ain't no role models, but that's the different podcast. But just to touch on the outside of that is saying that I still don't look to nobody that's older than me for no mentorship, because every time I look at somebody, they always on some BS. I don't get along with a lot of the men that's older than me because they always trying to son me, and you can't son me because you're not my daddy.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean you aren't learning something, right?
That does mean I'm not
Because
learning something, because the people that's trying to show me something is trying to make me do something and then hiding it under the guise that, oh, this is how you be a man.
but you learn from the negatives too,
I already know from the
right?
negatives.
But I'm saying, when I say you're not learning something, like even if you don't agree with how they do something, that's not how I'm going to do it. And when I talk about us growing up without a father and how it defines you, I look at how it defines you as a father now. Because for a while there, you didn't have your dad there. I didn't have my dad there for a while. Um, and that's something you refuse to do to your boys, and I refuse to do to my kids, right? And I feel like at times we may even go beyond. I'm not gonna say go beyond what we should do, but like when we look at some of our friends, they're like, "Man, you always there. Or you always got your kids with you, or you always taking your kids to do this." And it's just like, yeah, yeah, I am. Like that's how a parent should be.
Right.
But that we're taking that definition off of the fact that our dads weren't there to do that at the ages that our kids are now.
Right.
And granted, my dad came back into the picture when I was 9, 10 years old, so he immediately stepped in, and I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to go see him every summer.
Right.
But I mean, from August to May, I didn't. We were a phone call away. We weren't. I didn't have him to walk next to and to go to his house and see how things are done
Right.
and all of that.
But I can say for the same thing I said for me, I can say the same thing for you. You didn't have that, but you had the same circle. So
Yeah,
it didn't even cross your mind to think about that because we was just doing what we was doing and living. We was creating our own way, and people was trying to jump in that lane and do that. So in a sense, yeah, it helped shape or define me at that moment, but I don't think that made me into who I am today because now when I look back at all that stuff, I would go back and change some of it. But that's contradictory because if I had a time machine, I wouldn't go back and change nothing as much as I would want to, because then, like I said, we had a time machine, but you don't have foresight. All you're doing is changing a moment in time.
right.
And
You don't know how it's going to
if
affect.
we understand time, it's points that have to happen, things that have to happen. So regardless of when or how, either it's gonna happen more gory than it did, or it's gonna happen in a later time, but it's gotta happen. So at the end of the day, it was no point in going back and changing that because you're just making a whole bunch of split ends. But I don't think that it defined me as who I am today because I'm not even that same person I was when any of that stuff was going on. But before we keep going into that, on the previous episode, I was saying you shouldn't take that onto you, and I understand full and well that anybody can say anything. So all the stuff I'm saying is easier said than done. That's common sense. So
Yeah,
what everybody understands should have to be said. But I'm gonna say it because I know somebody's thinking, well, he just talking like you could just do this and that. I'm not talking like you could just do it overnight, but I'm talking because I believe in putting it into work. And for you, you have survivor's guilt where you survived something and you felt like if you was there, then something would have happened. But if that was supposed to happen, only difference is you experienced it up close or you experienced it from over here. I don't think it would have been healthy for you to have been there had that happened to him and you were there. I don't think it would have been a good idea for you to have been visiting your friend, and I think that would have made it worse had you visited him and he still did what he did, because then you would have felt like, well, then what was I going there for? I went here to comfort you and tell you something and to sit with you like you asked, and you still did this. And then you would feel betrayed because you felt like he was trying to reach out to you for help, but then he ultimately succumbed to his inner thoughts. So that's why I say you shouldn't take it upon yourself because you can't change the things that happen, or we should be living for today because tomorrow is not promised. And it sounds cliche, but that is what it is. So if you happen not to chill with somebody or to do something and then something happened, it was no way you knew that was going to happen, or you wouldn't have made the choice you would have made, right? So you wouldn't have chose not to walk had you known that was going to happen to him. You would have went over there.
right,
Had you known that your friend was going to hurt himself or do something like that, you would have drove over there immediately. So you
right,
know that. But so you putting that extra expectation on yourself and saying next time, but then you setting yourself up like the volleyball. You setting yourself up for when the next time happen, you're gonna say again, I wasn't there. So you can't do that to yourself because you putting an unbelievable expectation on your back for something that you cannot control.
I think that's the biggest thing now is that it's shaped me to need control, to need some aspect, some form of control, and you can probably even see that even in my career, where there has to be some type of control on my end for me to feel comfort. Even if it's not full control, there has to be some type of control. Um, Now, if you're okay, I want to lead this into what I feel like is another type of trauma,
I'm listening.
right? And it's one that I feel like a lot of our viewers may have dealt with, but it's the trauma of losing a parent, right? And you've gone through it, and you mentioned earlier how, like, when I lost what I felt like was my brother, you felt that pain, right?
I did.
And
I never told you that.
you never told me that, but when you lost a parent, I felt that pain. And even though I'll like you said, I'll never feel it like you because that was your parent. But I felt like that also helped to define not only me, but I'm wondering if you felt like that moment in time helped to define who you are today.
I think it helped put some things into perspective for me, but I don't think that it necessarily defined me. That was a very traumatic time that uh I don't think I dealt with any of that. I didn't take that time to do that. So now instead of trying to take the time or talk to somebody about it, it's just like that moment exists, but it don't exist for me because I can't
Mm,
really think about it. I mean, I try to, but I don't bother nobody with that thought, or like, it just be moments where I realize that it's a issue. So I'm not like holding it in like, oh my gosh, one day I'm just gonna fall out, black out. But for me, it's just literally to the point where I think I literally blotted that out of my mind, or I would
you've gone
black
numb
out.
to it.
Like, so if I start thinking about it, it's not even seconds. It's not like I'm having a panic attack. I literally cannot see. So I just don't even try to put myself in that situation because I don't, I can't even afford to have that time to do whatever that is that's going to do. Now, do I feel like that's going to bother me in the future or something? No, I take what little I can and I deal with it, and I take it to try to move past it, and I take steps. So I move forward at my pace. I don't feel like I need to go talk to nobody. I take the steps to move because I believe that I can get better and I will be okay, and I want to be better, and then I can't change it. And I just enjoy the time that I have with my mom. So yes, uh it hurts. I mean, that surprise. It hurts.
Yeah.
But like that's just something you just never want to experience. I don't go visit her gravesite. I don't go up there for Memorial Day. I don't do that. I just let my mama be where she is.
But do you think
And
that's because you haven't really closed or not? Because you never really closed a chapter, but is that because you haven't really addressed the trauma?
I don't think it's that. I address it when it comes up. So I just don't, to me, I just don't see a point in going up there when I know she's not there. So I'm like, I'm just going to visit ashes in a box to me.
Mm,
So I visit her in here.
right. So her the spirit that's still
So
the part of
if
her you remember and love.
I want to remember her, I go do something we used to do. I go eat a food she ate or how she cooked it, or I buy something specifically for that. Like something silly to other people is she will buy Hawaiian punch and we put it in the freezer and eat it slush. But all Midwesterners do that. But she would like to do that.
Nah, dog, I ain't never did that.
Yeah, but that's something that we did. So every now and then I
Yeah.
would go out my way and get the Hawaiian punch, and I would drink the whole thing by myself and just get a little slushy. It don't be gotta be froze. That's just something I do
Mm,
to do that. So it's just like, it ain't like, oh, I do it at a specific time or specific thing, because then that's ritualistic. I do it when I'm like, you know what, I feeling that, or I go get food, that we ate, or I do something that she would do.
yeah.
So I'm like, that's how I do that. I don't need to why when I want to go there and be crying my eyeball sockets out and go buy flowers and sit them somewhere for them to die? If anything, flowers wilting away is gonna remind me of her dying because flowers die.
Yeah, but sometimes I feel like dealing with the trauma, or not necessarily dealing with the trauma, but managing the trauma, uh, is allowing yourself that space to be able to, go and a lot of people, I think it's not necessarily ritualistic. It's, hey, I can go to their grave where I feel connected to them still in some capacity and have a conversation about those things, like, mama, you remember when we used to do this, or when we used to do this? And there's that kind of resemblance of that you're still speaking with them.
Right.
There's a physical portion of talking to them even though they're not physically there.
But here's the thing: why do I need to go to a gravesite to do that?
Some people just need some physical piece to remind them.
Right. But I'm saying an emotion or a memory is better to me. So I'm not knocking nobody for doing that, but I don't feel like I need to go up there and do that. I know where she's at.
But do you think that moment defined you who you are now?
No.
It made you this version of who you are?
Nah, because the version of me that it's in my head from that is not suitable for anything that we got going on family wise or anything, because that I felt like I died too. That was my everything. So yeah, it's just I mean, I was just starting my life to me and felt like I wanted to have those moments where I could say my mama was proud of me. But I can't say that. And I don't want to turn that into no pity party. And I didn't say I didn't deal with it. I just said when it comes up, I deal with how much I can take, and then I stop.
Yeah.
I don't need to go and talk to somebody and see somebody and try to open up this giant can or convey some feelings. No, I just, hey, I'm having a moment. I'm gonna walk through this moment, and then once I get to, all right, I think that's enough. We gonna put that back on there. I put it back on there because there's no point in taking all that on, because then your mind starts to wonder, and then I start feeling like how you felt. Well, why didn't I tell her not to do X, Y, and Z or whatever? It was no way I could have stopped that or predicted that or known any of that information. And then like I said, once you get talking about stuff like that, I think that people it turned into a pity party. Well, mom, so and so had so and so, and I don't want to hear that, because then I'm like, we all sitting here bringing up terrible memories, and nobody's talking about, oh yeah, my mom was a good person, she was, or my pop or my grandpa was, and that's what you need to hear in times like that. You don't need to hear nobody telling you how that is. Nobody don't remember blood transfusions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, do y'all think that your trauma defines who you are, or do you think that you and your trauma are two separate things? Are they associated? Not associated. You like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know.
Peace.